Welcome to All Is Well. I'm Dinah Krebs, your host. And on this podcast, we share inspiring stories of resilience and perseverance. Let's journey together to uncover the secrets to living life to the fullest, where we all live well. Hello, this is Diana Krebs with All Is Well Podcasting. And I am here today with Jon Antonucci. I just want to tell you that I heard his story and my jaw literally dropped to the floor. And to this day, months later, I'm still in so much shock. So if you are ready to really hear a true, make a mistake, bounce back, you're gonna be in for a treat today. So I'm gonna pass the mic right over to Jon.
Well, thank you, Diana, and great job on the last name. You killed that. That was good. No one could say my last name. I had someone yesterday that for literally the first time in my life, I'm 35 years old this year, the first time in my life without me telling them they were able to spell my last name. Usually they can't even say it. So you got it. You nailed it. It's awesome. Appreciate you for that. Yeah. Can you believe, I think it was about a year ago. I think it was last March.
Was it that long ago?
I think it was last March, and here we are, almost halfway into February, and I believe it was last March that we met at an event. I think it was a good event. Met some great people.
Yeah,
the people were probably better than the event, but I met some great people. You and your neighbor, Sabrina, I think is your neighbor, right?
Yeah. Sabrina was with me, and we went, and there were all sorts of speakers. And when you got up there, I was like, here's another speaker. And I was just, and I met your wife, and your wife is so lovely. I was
My wife's amazing.
This is not the kind of guy she grew up to, I thought you were the kind of guy she would grow up to marry if you knew her. But then to hear your backstory, it's just jaw dropping. I can't wait for you to tell people.
It's great. Yeah. I mean, well, it's not great, but it's the redemption, like you said, kind of picking yourself up and continuing on. My story started great. My story started, I didn't in any way, shape, or form grow up with a silver spoon in my mouth. A very poor family, in fact. At one point, my father was working 3 jobs. I'm the oldest of 5. And so we had very little. Growing up, I ate peanut butter and jelly every day for lunch. There wasn't even bologna and government cheese. It was peanut butter and jelly, and that's it, And so what did that do? Well, that turned me into somebody that really desired more. And so at a very young age, I started to try to earn more. 7 years old, I got my first job, not a real job, but I went out and started mowing lawns. And my dad, who I'm so thankful for now, we never appreciate our parents when we're kids. You know how that goes. Right. But then later we start to. And my dad, I said, hey, the lady at the end of the block, her grass is overgrown. I'd like to go mow it. Can I borrow the lawnmower? And he said, sure. You can do that. For every lawn you mow, you can charge whatever you want, but you owe me $1 for using the mower and the gas and that which is in it. And so teaching me the economy right off the bat. And I think that's so good. And it's helped me in my entrepreneurial journey. And by the time I was 12, I was delivering newspapers, still mowing lawns, raking leaves, shoveling sidewalks. This is Colorado, where I was growing up there. I sold stuff for a catalog. I don't know if you may remember, how your kids would go and sell fundraiser stuff from catalogs to earn money for school or whatever. Days. Well, I found one of those that would pay me cash money for every item I sold. And so I think it was called Olympia Sales Club or something like that. I don't know if they're still around, but that was, 25, 30 years ago. So selling stuff, mowing lawns and whatnot. I was delivering newspapers. I was also selling newspaper subscriptions. And then there was a local produce store that I would go in and hand out their flyers. Oh, and then there was also a little like a convenience store, like a Texaco, that I would go in at 4 a.m. and go make all the coffee and stock the shelves and do all that at 12. At 12, I was just out there really trying to do things.
Nuts to be.
Yeah. And then at that same age, right around 11 or 12, I started getting involved in martial arts and was kind of naturally adept at it. And so that allowed me to do a lot. I think I was 12. Actually, I know I was 12 years old when I taught my first class of martial arts. And it was a complete, like, crazy situation where the actual instructor was stuck in traffic and the parents of the class were like, "We think you should teach." And I was like, I am not the highest ranking. I am not the oldest. I have no permission to do such a thing.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? And they were like, well, we're paying for the class and we think you should teach. So I did. I got up in front of the class and I taught, and that was the kind of the beginning of the end. By the time I was 15, I was an assistant instructor. And by the time I was 19, I had moved to Phoenix by that time and had over 500 students across the Phoenix Metro Valley that I was teaching martial arts to in different locations. And so everything's just going great for me, right? Working really hard and adding a ton of value. I had 19 years old. I had a 4-bedroom house that I was renting and a vehicle that was completely paid off. And oh, no, I'm sorry. That's not true. That vehicle was not paid off, but a nice vehicle. Everything looked to be going very, very well. I
You
was
look like you were
coaching
on a
soccer
path
on
to
the
total success.
yeah, coaching soccer on the weekends, teaching martial arts. I was working in the office for the company that I was working for. Um, and it started my kind of slip started with a lack of integrity that was seemingly justifiable. And I think that's where a lot of our mistakes come in, where we can rationalize. We can rationalize just about anything as human beings. We're really good at rationalizing bad choices. But I started. I'll use the harsh word. I started embezzling money. That's not how I viewed it at the time, but now I look back. I started embezzling money, and that created a chain of events. And I was eventually fired from that company, of course. And through it's so hard to explain without going all into it. For the record, this is all written in a book. If anybody wants my little published story, I'm happy to send it. It's not anything you got to pay for. So if they want kind of like the nitty-gritty details of any of this, I'm happy to share. Full disclosure, though, it is written from a very Christian perspective. So if they're not really wanting the religious side of things, then they probably won't enjoy the book very much. But
I want to read the book for
okay, yeah,
sure.
I'd be happy to email that to you. It's just a 52-page PDF that I put together years ago, and eventually it'll get turned into a real book. But I kind of feel like more um, pattern of success is warranted before I put anything out there. Because, well, let me continue with the story before I get ahead of myself. But
Okay.
anyways, so yeah, fired from the company. Some of my friends were also under investigation, and it was really looking bad. And what really kind of you start to justify things. This company was, um, while they were asking all of us to cut expenses and try to figure things out in a different way, the owners were going on extravagant vacations and things like that. And so when you see things like that, it's so easy to start to rationalize because you don't know the whole story, and I still don't know the whole story. But to make a very long story short, me and 3 of my friends, all of us who had worked or were working for that company, thought that it would be a good idea to go light that building on fire, their office building. And to this day, people always, why? Like, what were you thinking? And it's been over 15 years now since that event, and I still don't know the answer. I still cannot say like, well, Diana, it's obvious because we thought this, and this. It's like it's still like, what was I thinking? The only thing I can think of from a personal perspective was I wanted to feel cool. I wanted to feel like a sense of belonging, and I even though I was a leader in the group, I was so insecure. I was so personally lacking my own identity that I lacked courage. I lacked integrity. I lacked the things that a good person and a leader really has. So even though I was in leadership, I
Right.
wasn't being a true leader.
Isn't that
And
crazy when we're kids? That's how it is. If you think back to when you were 12, or I can't remember how old you when you said, the parents were like, you could teach this class. Like
yeah,
people already saw you as a leader. Like, why were you not seeing yourself as that?
yeah. Well, and I think I did see myself as a leader. I just had a warped view of what leadership was. Because to
Yeah.
me it was an ego trip. It was, I'm important, I get to tell people what to do. There wasn't really a heart to serve, and if there was, it was all a kind of a facade of, I'm serving because it's me and I get to
Right.
feel important. And when you're fired, that of course messes with your ego.
Hmm.
I don't think that I helped with the fire because I was fired, but it's hard to kind of wrangle some of those emotions and really figure
Right.
out those thought processes. Bottom line is the fire was started. It never should have. I think if any one of us had said, "Hey, I'm not doing this," I think the other three would have been like, "Okay, cool, let's go home." But none of us did, and I didn't, and so it took me a while. You mentioned a second ago that other people perceived me as a leader. It took me a long time to realize that whether I wanted it or not, my natural born leadership tendencies made me inherently more culpable. We've all heard the phrase, to whom much is given, much is required. I
Right.
really struggled with that for a long time. Why? Well, because the fire was started. I did not light the match. In fact, when the fire was physically lit, I was not even present. I had helped break into the building, and then I got scared, and I was running away when the match was lit. And so I heard a loud pop and saw kind of a fireball go up in the sky because of the gasoline. Um, and so for me, it took me years to really come to grips. It took me months to realize that I was in any way culpable. To me, it was like, no, I broke a window. Why am I going to prison for this?
Yeah.
But I did so much more, right? My actions, and so the ripple effect. So the fire was started. I spent 12 years in prison. 12 years in prison, 14-year prison sentence, 12 of them in prison, 2 years under what they call community supervision, which is a fancy word for parole now. They don't have parole anymore. They have community supervision. Um, and that time was so instrumental in my growth. It, you look at me now. I had a cool scenario. I went to a conference,
Mhm.
and one of the chaplains who was on one of the units that I was on was there, and he introduced me. Hey, this is somebody that I served with, and he was trying to be like very polite about it. And I'll be like, hey, this is some former inmate. He was trying to
Yeah.
be polite, and the guy looked at me and he goes, oh, well, thank you for your service, sir. Assuming he was referring to military.
Yeah.
And so you look at me and you hear me speak and whatever, and there's no, I mean, you can't tell. No, nobody can tell. I was on a
Yeah.
call with a potential client the other day, and she's an HR administrator, and she disclosed that she had actually done a little bit of jail time, and I just listened to her as she was kind of sharing her story, and then said, "No, I know, I was there." He goes, "Huh?
Yeah.
I did time," and you
That's
can't
the
tell. And I'm so,
reaction.
oh, go ahead. Sorry, go.
Sorry, that was the reaction of the room when you had said
Yeah,
it. You were like, I'm a felon. You're like,
yeah.
what?
Wait.
Wait, who? Looked around the room, maybe him, but not you.
Yeah.
You never
And
know.
there's so much grace in my life in that. But let me tell you one of the reasons why. The reasons why is because it was very shortly after I was arrested that I began to recognize some things. And the first thing I recognized is that it wasn't the system that was the problem. It wasn't my friends that were the problem. I literally, when I tell my story, and in some situations, I label it as no excuses. The only entity that had a problem was me. I was the issue, and it was a lack of character, and it was a lack of anything really good. I had good things about me, but nothing good in me really. And so I had to identify that I was the issue. And once I identified that, I could start taking action.
Right.
I could start becoming the person I needed to be. And so during my 12 years of incarceration, I invested so much time and energy into both my own growth and the growth of others. That started with really reading and learning and studying, and not coming at it from I'm a leader and I tell everybody what to do, but rather I'm a nobody and I need to learn. There's a group that I work with, the Growth Learning Network, and he talks about the stages of growth, and he says you have a time where you are unconsciously unskilled. In other words, you don't know what you don't know. And when you are unconsciously unskilled, you tend to think that you know so much more than you actually do, or at least I did.
Yes.
And so there comes a point, there usually is a world altering event for me. I was actually just sharing this yesterday. For me, it was when the handcuffs were being clicked on my wrist. Click, 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 click. And it was like, wait a minute. Something is not as I think it is. And at that moment, and for everybody it's different, right? It could be something as humongous as a divorce, or waking up after a blackout drunk episode, or you realizing your bank account has no more money in it based on decisions that have been made, whatever. But when that moment happens, then you potentially have the opportunity to be consciously unskilled and recognize that you don't know. You still may not know what you don't know, but you don't know.
Right.
And so recognizing that was so instrumental for me. And I started reading books, that would help me grow, and really trying to just grow and learn and become the best version of Jon, because I wasn't as I thought I was. And the growth strategy that I was just talking about would then say, after you're unconsciously unskilled and then consciously unskilled, then you have a choice about whether to bury your head in the sand and just continue to be consciously unskilled but pretend that you're not, or you can become consciously skilled and you can put the work in. And so when I was in prison, I really didn't get in much trouble. The trouble that I always got into was when people would tell me I didn't know my place. I often had jobs that had me working directly with staff. I functioned in a variety of jobs, but chaplain's clerk and programs clerk, and um, things that often had me in with administration. And in fact, I was one of the only inmates that almost every unit I was on, I had a computer, which you don't get a computer as an inmate. That's like a not a thing. But why? It was because it wasn't just because, oh, we like Jon and he's doing good things. It was because I was investing into the success of others at the same time. And my legacy in the Department of Corrections to this day is the programs and things that I built there. I helped build what's known as IPP, which stands for Inmate Peer Programming, which was programs and resources that were designed by inmates, facilitated through inmates to other inmates to help give them the tools they need for success when they walk out of the prison system. And I trained the trainer, and I was at one point anyways, I was kind of the guy. And last I knew, some of the stuff that I created is
Yeah.
still all over the state. But the idea was, okay, I am investing into becoming the person I was designed to be, not the person that I think I want to be. And so through that journey, I got to walk out of prison 12 years later. That's a long time. I was in prison from the time I was 19 to the time I was 31. My entire 20s were taken up. And so you walk out during that time, and the statistics are alarming, right? The people that walk into prison at 19 don't walk out at 31 with no face tattoos, right? They don't walk out with their front teeth, right? Because that's just, it's such a vulnerable time in your life. And
Yeah.
it's such a long time, right? When you're 19 and you're given a 14-year prison sentence, like, just conceptualize, you probably don't have 14 years of memories at 19, right? Your memory, you might have 15 or 16 actually, because your memory starts about 2. But when you're really thinking about it, it's like, I'm going to
Yeah.
spend my
Yeah.
lifetime in there.
My son's he's in ninth grade, and I said, "Oh, remember when you were in kindergarten? This friendship soup." He's like, "How am I going to remember making friendship soup in kinder?" Like, for him, that was so long ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even at
Yeah.
50, you don't really always remember the younger
No.
years,
Yeah, you don't. And so it's a long time. And I saw a lot of people do it the wrong way, or at least the way differently than the way I did it.
right?
But I really invested heavily. And I walked out with a master's degree and a bachelor's and several associates and tons of certifications, and the legacy of really taking what I was able to learn and then empowering others, doing money management classes and job seeking strategies classes, and a class based on Stephen Covey's book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and all sorts of stuff. I think at one point we had over 24 different programs that we had built and that we were offering to the other inmates as a means by which to help them, empower them and give them the tools and resources they needed to
I
be
I love
successful when
that
they got
so
out.
much because how
Yeah.
many people are in prison right now who made a mistake? I mean, it's a big mistake to light somebody's business on fire. I'm not diminishing that at all.
No.
I'm just saying that like we make a mistake and we inherently are not horrible people. We just in a moment did something,
Yeah.
and to have to go to jail and come out of it so scathed that the rest of your life is ruined is, I just think it's horrible. I love that you built programs for people to go in and then be able to come out
Yeah.
and have a life and do good and be good and you know.
Well, in the state of Arizona, I don't know if the numbers are right this moment, but for the most of the time that I was there was an average of 40,000 people just in the state of Arizona Department of Corrections. That does not include the jails. That does not include any of the county or transition programs. That's just in the state-run Department of Corrections. There was about 40,000. And so, yeah, there's a ton of people that are there, and a ton of people that some of which actually had excuses, right? I met people where they were in prison, yes, but that's because they had done their first hit of methamphetamine with their mom at age 12. There were people, their whole family was involved, and they would get out, hey, Uncle so and so, good to see, and that was the only time that they saw their family because the
Yeah.
rest of their family was there. I didn't have any of that. I had no excuses. And so not only did I need to redeem kind of my own choices, but I also felt a weight to try to live in a way that would kind of honor Josh's life. So Josh is my best friend. He's the one that physically lit the match, and he did not make it out of that building alive. And that is it's a touchy subject, not because I can't talk about it. I'm happy to have a discussion. It's a touchy subject because from a legal standpoint, I'm responsible for his murder. That is the charge that I face. When someone is committing a felony and someone dies, the charge in Arizona at least is actually, it's called felony murder, which is the same category as first degree murder. And I say it's a touchy subject, again, not because I can't discuss it, but because there is a dichotomy of blame versus fault. From a legal standpoint, I am to blame. But I didn't kill Josh. I did not kill Josh. I didn't want Josh dead. It was not my actions specifically that killed him. And I think that was one of the things that I really struggled with for a long time with it all is I broke a window. I didn't light the fire. I didn't kill Josh. I didn't do any of that. I came to recognize that in the big picture of the event, my natural leadership capacity created a level of responsibility that can't necessarily be articulated or quantified,
Right.
but is larger than someone who just participated. But I still struggle with, the responsibility for Josh's death. And people have gotten very angry with me for that. It's your fault Josh died. And I don't know that I can agree with that. I don't know. I definitely take responsibility for what I did.
Right.
And not just breaking a window, but the whole participation, the whole part of the planning, the whole part of the conversation, the whole part of not saying no. Because if I had said no, I'm fairly certain that nobody else would have pushed the issue, right?
Right.
I take full responsibility, and I'm not in any way, shape, or form trying to mitigate or mediate that. But at the same time, I want to honor that life more than I want to try and say, well, I'm going to say, woe is me. That's my fault. Josh, Josh's life ended that night. Josh died in that fire. And there's details. Again, if you want to read the story, I'd be happy to send that over to you. There's details in there that are fairly traumatic about how that all went down. And the media, if anybody decides to look it up, and I kind of hope they don't because I don't want those results to come to the top of the search engines again, but people are going to do whatever. The media believes, and they genuinely believe it, that I was there with Josh while he was on fire. That is not true. I wish it was. I wish I could have done something. But they've got a weird camera angle on something that suggests that I was there. And there's even a 2020 episode that says the camera doesn't lie. And it's like, I don't know what's that. I don't know what's there. I can't say. I mean, it's a very blurry image. It's nothing, there's definitely not me there. There's just an image and they say, well, that's another person. And we think that's Antonucci. But I say all that to say that Josh's life ended, and I want to honor that legacy by doing things that say, hey, mistakes were made. 4 of us participated. 1 of us paid a price that any one of us could have paid. It could have been me.
Right.
That could have been me that night.
Right.
Um, I don't know why it cost Josh his life. I don't know. One of my co-defendants believes that Josh did it on purpose. That's his, and he was the one that actually tried to put Josh out. He tried to get the fire out on Josh and was unable to do so. Um, but he wonders there's some backstory on that, and he wonders if Josh had just kind of given up and said, you know what, this is not worth it anymore. I don't know. I have no way to know. But what I do know is that I still have a life, and that life is called to serve people. And so I was able to walk out of prison after serving not just my time, but serving those around me and trying to give them tools for success. That investment paid dividends in the opportunity that I had where I became the training manager for a specialty logistics company. They said, "Hey, if you can build materials like that, let's tap that resource and let's bring you over." And I functioned as the training manager for a little over 2 years before they asked me to become the director of revenue for the organization. And in the meantime, while I was in the training manager position, there was a whole bunch of events, and I know we're running short on time, but there's a bunch of events that led to me realizing that my passion was what you've heard me say a few times, and that's empowering people. I want to serve and I want to give people the tools they need to serve.
Right.
And it was in a conversation with the CEO of the company where we were just discussing um, leadership training, and we were looking at it from a little bit of different angles. And I just said, we've got to do this. And she said, all right, I'll be interested to see what you put together. And it was kind of in that moment that I realized I already had it. I already had the curricula. I already had been doing it when I was training the trainer in the Department of Corrections. And then I started looking for additional kind of supplementary resources and was not finding what I was looking for. And so that was the beginning of SML Consultative. SML stands for Servant Minded Leadership. And it is a privilege to serve leaders and give them the tools, specifically frontline leaders, the lower level leaders. I call them the forgotten leaders, the ones that get promoted into positions of leadership because they know how to do their job really well. And then they're just left to figure it out. And we
Yeah.
can't figure out why things fall off or why the wheels fall off at that point. And the reason that the wheels fall off is because no one ever gave them the tools to keep them on. And so that was kind of the what was born out of that, and it's been wonderful. I'm now married, which you mentioned my beautiful wife earlier in this podcast. Been able to serve in my church now. I've been helping lead the college ministry, the 18 to 25-year-olds. And then recently, like literally last week or week and a half ago, we moved across the country. So I'm now in South Carolina, and we just got a new place, which is why all my walls are bear behind me.
Yeah.
And we're making things work here, but it's beautiful in South Carolina. And yeah, we are very just thankful for so many of these things, but the journey has been a journey of growth. And I think I don't know who is going to listen to the podcast. I have no idea what they're going to get out of this specifically. I wouldn't want to try to control that, but I will say that if you're going through something, whatever it is does not have to be the end of the story. Maybe you're at the beginning where you just made a really bad decision. Maybe you're in the middle where you're in the middle of the consequences of your decision. Maybe you're just a person watching as someone else goes through.
Yeah.
Someone you love is going through it. There is redemption. There is an opportunity for us to make better choices, and it can be really, really good, but it's a
I
lot
love
of work.
that you just said that. I love
Yeah,
that you said, like, this does not have to be the end of your story.
yeah,
This could be the beginning. This could be what you're walking through. Because
yeah.
it's really true, right? It's really true. And what you've been through isn't actually who you are all the time either. It's
No,
what
no.
would let me ask you, because you said just really quickly when you were talking about, you just started to read, like what book or books would you, if someone had to, their very first step was just to pick up a book,
Mm.
what would the book be that you would say?
It's such a cliche answer, in my opinion, but I think the first book it's actually one of the first books I have anybody that works for me or anybody that I'm working with. The first book I have them read is that book I mentioned earlier, and that's Stephen Covey's Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. I used to teach a class on it. Covey doesn't have all the answers, just like nobody does. But let
Right.
me tell you, if you're looking to make a change in your life, the model that Covey kind of provides says, first, you need to take responsibility,
Yeah.
and then you need to have a goal, and then you need to put action to that goal. And once you do that, then you can start engaging with other people in a way that is mutually beneficial, as you genuinely try to understand what the need is around you so that you can serve that need and work with others to accomplish great things and then just keep improving. And that's in 30 seconds. That is Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. But that's the book. I mean, that book was really good for me. And I often cite various aspects of that, especially for someone that's trying to maybe just find a framework that says, hey, how can my life be more productive?
Yeah. I love that. I did read that book and I actually bought my son The Seven Habits of Highly Effective Teenagers,
Mm-hmm.
I think. And now my daughter just turned 13 and I don't even know. I've got to get them to read it.
Yeah.
But you know, that is so true. I do a lot of teen empowerment, and that's the one thing I want to tell these kids. It's like you got to take responsibility for what's happening to you because that's how you're going to walk out of it, you
We
know?
live in a culture right now where victimhood is celebrated.
Yeah.
And I want to make a distinguishing difference right now. Being victimized is not the same as being a victim.
Right.
You can't always control whether you have been victimized. You 100% of the time can choose whether or not you are going to be a victim.
Yeah. Yes.
And we live in a society right now that in an effort to provide voices to those who have been victimized, which is a good thing,
Right.
we have elevated victimhood, which without intending to gives away all of our power.
Yes.
You have no free agency or choice as a victim.
Right.
And so it's always everybody else's fault. It's always somebody else did this to me. And we eliminate the opportunity to take responsibility for our lives and recognize that our choices have ripples. When you
Yeah.
heard me speak at the conference, I talked about how that's
Love
the
that.
beauty of leaders is that leaders will touch the lives of those they lead, whether good or bad,
Yeah.
they will touch the lives of those they lead. And so that ripple effect can't be stopped. It can only we all we can do is make sure that it's a positive ripple. But if we eliminate our choice, oh, I can't help it.
Yeah.
She makes me. He makes me.
Yeah.
No, no, no. He or she does not have that power. You
Right.
choose. And it's everywhere. It's everywhere. Part of the conversation we were having yesterday about the growth model that I was just referring to earlier was when, when we're late, right? You show up late for a meeting. What do you say? The traffic was bad,
Uh,
right? What's the honest statement? I didn't plan ahead.
yeah.
My agency, I have to take that agency, that ownership. What is it? Jocko talks about extreme ownership.
Yeah.
And those are the types of things that I think really empower people. But our culture is not helping people be empowered. And we can't figure out why we can figure out nothing better to do than play video games.
Oh, I know.
Why not? I have no control in my life.
Don't even get
I'm
me
a
started
victim.
on all this. Sometimes the moms pages, I'm like, come on. Right now there's this thing on like the tardy sweeps at school, and I pulled up at like 7, and school starts at 7:25. I pulled up at 7:20. It took me 4 minutes to get to the front of that pickup line to drop my daughter off. I'm like, why are you turning in at 7:20? Like, let's just start there.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's not fair, my daughter. And we are raising our kids like this now, you
Mhm.
know? It's not fair. It's not fair. I don't know. You know, it's not
We've
fair.
swung, and I mean, we do it in culture, right? I mean, this is a whole different conversation, but we've done this in culture where we tend to just pendulum swing from one side to the other. So there were, I don't know, probably both of our childhood.
Right.
When we were growing up, if the teacher said Diana was misbehaving in school, oh, Diana was getting a whooping, right? The teacher
Right.
was believed. There was no questions about it,
Right.
right? And that turned into, unfortunately, some teachers, not most, certainly not all,
Yeah.
but some teachers abusing that power. And
Right.
now what do we have? We have people coming forward saying my teacher sexually molested me and my teacher beat me and whatever. And so what did we do? Well, now we've swung all the way to the other side, and
Right.
now no teacher is believable. And
Right.
if the teacher says Diana is acting up in class, now that teacher is going to get an earful from the parents because Diana would never act up in class. I don't care if she's a hooligan at the house. In class, she's a perfect angel, and don't you dare allege otherwise.
Yeah, you're right.
And so it's we've swung way too far because we're trying to compensate instead of recognizing no, the teacher is the authority in the room.
Right.
Should there be checks and balances? Of course there should. Should we be allowing teachers unchecked to do whatever they want to our children? No, of course not. But does that mean that the teacher is never right? I've got friends and family members that are teachers, and every one of them is like, I don't know if I'm going to continue. I don't know if I can. I'm not doing any good. I can't tell these kids what to do. I'm not allowed to enforce any sort of level of discipline. It's just I stand at the front of the room and they do whatever they
Right.
want, and I hope something might possibly sink in eventually.
Right. Right. Well, I just love that mindset of like, okay, what's my part in this and how
That's
do I
right.
take responsibility in this and how do I change this? And, maybe my teacher doesn't like me. What's my responsibility in that? How do I
Yes.
change that? What do I need to do? Even and sometimes it's really hard. Some of these kids are very bullied, or people are really bullied at their job, or that they're really, But how can I walk out of it the other side? Like what you can't
100%.
always control how people treat you, but you can control what you do with that and how you let it
Absolutely.
affect you and how you grow from it. And why is your story like? Why did you go to jail? Well, maybe that you just had to. Maybe
Yeah.
you had to go to jail to learn how to develop these programs so you can come out of jail and teach other people how to develop these programs because it's like a shock factor,
Yeah.
Maybe maybe the world needed that, and unfortunate for that person's business, really unfortunate for Josh. We just definitely want to honor him. But I feel sad. I want to cry like 19-year-old kid. But anyway,
Yeah.
it's like there's what we do with it and what you did with it. I just think is so honorable and so incredible that you are changing lives and you are out there, teaching these leaders how to be leaders. Could not be a better gift to this world.
It's a privilege to be able to do. And I count it that way. I don't take it for granted as I might have without that experience.
So, well, Jon, I absolutely appreciate you being here today
Yeah.
and telling your story. And, I hope more and more people in this world get to listen to it and
Yeah.
pull some strength from it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.